that we might have expected to be. Because do you remember there were all of these people doing a 5K and a 10K and a half marathon and a full marathon, and they're just tearing past us. And I saw you with the backpack on. I went, oh, thank God I'm not the only idiot dying out here.
Yeah, I mean, it seems a distant memory to me now, Oman, really. It's funny how the mind sort of puts things on a shelf after you've done it. And I really liked Oman. It was kind of, I'd done a few ultra races before, but continuous ultras. But I think Oman really work. The stage race is a different kettle of fish, really. In some
Yeah.
ways, it's easier than a continuous ultra. In other ways, it's tougher because you have the self-sufficiency part. And for me, I found the physical aspect of Oman a little easier than sort of like 100 milers, but I found the self-sufficient part more difficult, if you understand me.
Well, strap into your seat because wait till I tell you, I found the physical side of Oman so much harder than MDS. The
Okay.
terrain is, I mean, just night and day compared to MDS. Now, MDS is still a really tough race, but Oman is 90% soft sand. MDS this year, they tried to make it harder and brought it all the way up to 40% soft sand.
Okay.
So, like the going underfoot in Oman is very different. That said, the sand in Oman is quite different to the sand in the Sahara, and I mean, you end up reading it very differently. But the camping experience in Oman, I found to be bougie AF, as my family would say. Like, what luxury living conditions compared to MDS. So MDS, there's 8 of you to a bivouac. The bivouac is just a camel hair blanket propped up by literally 2 tree branches, and you're on a rug on the sand. So you're exposed on both sides. You're probably sleeping head to toe, and you're sleeping like you're in a coffin because that's the room that you have. It's dirty, it's disgusting. You've no hot water, there's no electricity, there's no lighting. I mean, you're completely self sufficient and open to the elements, whether it's 60 degrees or it's a sandstorm. In Oman, those tents that we had, I mean, for the people listening, like, how would you describe them? These big rectangular that can be completely closed in, structurally sound. You can stand upright in them, and there was few enough of us in each tent that you could just sleep starfished and not touch somebody.
Yeah.
That was cool, and the hot water made a massive difference in Oman. Like that, having that Burqa boiler in the middle of the camp, so that you could just go over I mean, that removed probably 45 minutes of faff in the mornings while you were just relative to MDS, just being able to walk over. And the mornings were great, right? The early risers were all standing around the Burqa boiler, having a coffee, letting their breakfast hydrate. And it was, I mean, yes, it's hard, of course, but there's definitely harder. So I would say MDS was easier underfoot in many ways, but a much more brutal camping experience. And Oman, yeah, the other way around.
Yeah, I think Oman, the way they do it, and obviously because there's way fewer participants, I think they've got a really nice balance. And I mean, we were saying, maybe not me and you, but a few of us were sort of saying, if you doubled the numbers in Oman, say you went from 50 to 100, then it's a bit of a different ball game, isn't it? I
Mm.
mean, I don't know how many's in MDS. Is it 1,000 or is it that many?
It's usually at least 1,000,
Yeah,
sometimes a bit more. And of course, it is absolutely a different level of production when you're trying to
yeah,
cater to that number of people. And part of the appeal of Oman was how small it is, right? I mean, I think the first night there, we shared a bivouac with the El Morbiti brothers, right? Rashid and Mohammed, like the 2 best desert runners in the world who win Oman or who win MDS. One or other of them wins MDS every year. And at MDS, those elite runners are sort of they're not kept off to one side, but like you're not socializing with them. Whereas like we were just all in it together. Every one of us knew each other by the end of it. You knew every competitor, whether you were the world's best desert runner or you were hiking the race. And that really added to the experience for me. I love that part of it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, meeting those guys and just seeing them, how they performed on the sand and how they read the sand is just next level. That was one of the, after sort of the second day, you kind of, you figure it out with the sand and where to run, and it kind of starts to sink in, and you start to get it. And I think yeah, like you say, underfoot in Oman is just the funny thing is, you kind of in on the first day in Oman when you set out, you kind of think, oh, this isn't too bad, the first sort of 20k, and you think, oh, this is all right. Then you hit 30k and you go into the sand dunes, and then you just go, oh, just whatever time you had in your head, whatever pace, just throw it in the ocean, because now it don't matter. It is just, forget it. You're just hiking, and the sand. I people have asked me about it, or I've spoke to friends of mine, and they kind of, it's, your pace looks slow on this, and I'm like, listen, mate, have you ever carried like your family's beach bags across a beach looking for a sunbathing spot? And you go about 100 meters and you go, oh, sack it, here'll do, because I'm not carrying this anymore. I said, you do that for like 100 miles, and that's basically what it's like. It's brutal.
That is a really great way of describing it. Yeah. I tend to double like I plan for double whatever my speed across normal trails would be. And that tends to work well for me. So it means I'm probably carrying a little more weight than I need to because I'm bringing more fuel than I need to. But I'd rather have too much fuel and have an extra half a kilo on my back than not have enough fuel. And you find yourself out there with an hour and a half left to go on a stage and no fuel to get you through it. But yeah, I think until people are out there, you just can't understand the difference. And like even MDS to Oman aren't comparable, right? The paces are different, but I think unless you're Rashid or Mohammed or one of these, you need to train to move across sand without running, like just getting that training, that power hike or speed walk or whatever you want to call it, which is like I think you lose less energy across sand unless you're a really accomplished sand runner, right? On that looser sand, just developing the muscle memory of moving quickly across it.
Yeah, I mean those guys, I'm guessing they probably weigh 60 kilos, 65 kilos, and they're, and it's a big thing. I mean, I'm at 80 kilos ish or something like that, and for me, it was like you feel that. You feel every kilogram you have. And
Yeah.
my coach was saying to me in the lead up to Oman, he was saying, Steve, how much is your backpack? And I'm like, that's 9 kilos. And he just replied, too heavy.
Yeah.
Lose at least 2 kilos. And I was
Yeah.
like, and I was chopping everything, and I just couldn't get it any lighter than like 8 kilos, 7.
Hmm.
No, I think I got it to like 7.5 kilos without the water, and he was still
Yeah.
saying that's too heavy. And I was kind of thinking, no, I think it feels all right. And I was going on the stair stepper and I was testing it out, and I thought this isn't too bad. But when you've gone the whole day and then you put it on the next day, then you go, now I know what he meant, because this bag
Yeah.
is too heavy. But
Yeah.
that's the skill, or the challenge is how to pack the bag, and it's a really important factor.
It really is. I mean, my bag was actually heavier this time, but intentionally heavier. It was heavier because I brought more fuel. But if I had just brought more fuel and not had the lessons from Oman, from MDS the first time, I can't imagine. I mean, I'd have had a house on my back. But I mean, you can't skimp on the fuel, right? You gotta know what fuel you need for whatever effort you intend to sustain at whatever altitude, at whatever temperature, and everything else, yeah. Um, Everything else can get thrown. I had an interesting conversation in the desert at MDS this year. So you're 2 nights in the bivouac before you set off in the race, and you have your gear, you have everything, your suitcase, everything with you the first
Oh,
night,
wow.
and then they do your gear check sort of early on the next day, and that's when you lose your suitcase. So you kind of have until then to figure out what are the desert conditions like, what am I going to bring? What am I going to leave? Well, that evening, I was chatting to a chap, pretty damn decent ultra runner actually, but it was his first multi-stage race. He'd just flown in from the States, and we were talking about backpacks. He's like, "Yeah, mine's like 12 kilos or something like that." I was like, "Okay, let's have a talk about that." And he said, "Well, I've got seven t-shirts, seven socks, seven shorts. I've got this, I've got this, I've got this. I've got a pump for my inflatable mattress. I've got." I was like, "All right, okay, dude, let's let's have a conversation." He's like, "Why? What are you wearing?" I was like, "You see the clothes that are on me? That's it." He's like, "Won't you stink?" I was like, "Yes, but I won't notice. And honestly, everybody else is going to stink. They're not going to notice either." Um, I think in the end, I kept one spare pair of socks, and that was it, right? Whereas I think the first time I did it, I had a couple of change of shorts, a couple of change of t-shirts, but definitely not on the seven of everything to get you through the race.
Yeah, I think in Oman, I think I took one spare pair of boxer shorts. I took four pairs of socks because I thought you've got to look after your feet in a big way.
Mm,
Um, and so I think your feet and fuel is one of the most important things in any ultra race. I mean, in the recent races I've done, it's feet and fuel. If you neglect one of those, it's pretty much can be a
yeah.
showstopper, you know.
That's it. You don't come back from it, right? Once the feet start to go,
Yeah.
they're not suddenly going to be better the next day. And I mean, if you underfuel too badly in one of these stage races, you can really wreck yourself
Yeah.
quite badly that the body's not going to be able to do the next day.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that was actually, I mean, I'm relatively new to ultra running, only been going a couple of years, and I've never done a stage race since uh, up till Oman, and that was a big mistake I made on the first night. I didn't feel like eating much, and I
Mm,
didn't eat much, and then the second day was a hell of a day, like a hell
yep.
of a day, really terrible. The third day, I kind of ate something. The fourth day. So for me, fueling, you don't want to eat you don't feel like eating, the heat, the adrenaline maybe is still pumping, but it's so
Hmm.
important just to shove it in
Yeah.
your hole at night and just get food and fuel in you, and sugar and carbohydrate and everything like that. It's really important, I found.
It is, and the stuff that you like at home may not be, in fact, almost certainly won't be the stuff that you're able to
Yeah.
palate out in the desert. The first time I did MDS, I'm looking across at I've got all my gear from MDS on the table beside me. I'm looking across at it. I had all the different adventure foods, the freeze dried meals, and I had carbonaras, and I had all this kind of stuff. And most of it I had to force into me, except for two of their Indian curries, which were so like that the flavors were so powerful that they were just like this incredible blast of flavor in the desert. And so this time, when I went, and the same actually in Oman, all I did was brought a curry for each night. They have two different types of curries, and I brought half and half to cover me for the whole race. And I looked forward to my dinner every single night. And so that really helped. The porridge in the morning, the freeze dried porridge, I don't think anybody likes it. I think it's pretty rough. And in fact, I think if I'm doing it again, I'll bring the like breakfast biscuit bar type things. They're almost calorifically as dense,
Mm.
and there's just less fat to them in the morning. You're not having to rehydrate something or boil water, any of that kind of stuff. Just get it into you and go. But like there were lads going out doing MDS. It's like, hey, what are you fueling on? It's like, I brought a couple of gels. It's like, all right, let's think that through. Like, is that 90 grams of carbohydrates an hour? Is it 60? Is it 120? And they're like, I don't. Yeah. They might have 100 grams of carbs to do them a whole day. And and here's the shameless plug for your sponsor. I brought Tailwind, right?
Mm.
And like over the years, and I don't want that to sound like I'm an accomplished runner, but over the years of trying to be an accomplished runner, I've learned to dial it in with tailwind, and like there was never less than 90 grams of carbohydrates going into me every hour.
Mm.
And that's a lot of like that's where most of my weight came from. But I know that I can keep going on the tailwind. First MDS, I thought I was fat adapted going into it. So it's like brilliant. I'm just going to bring macadamia nuts because like calories per gram, they're the most calorically dense thing other than like olive oil or something that you can bring with you. And I learned two things. One, that I wasn't fat adapted. So my body was not accessing the carbohydrates that I was putting into it. And two, I learned that if I ever see a macadamia nut again, I will be sick. Uh, and so, like, what saved my ass that first time was one of the guys who from our bivouac who didn't make it handed me some of his tailwind. And I was like, brilliant. So I was able to use that for the last few days, the first year. And so this year, same in Oman, same in MDS, it was just 100% tailwind. Like if something's not broken, like don't mess with it, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, tailwind. It just tastes quite nice, really, no matter what flavor you've got, and it doesn't feel too. To me, it doesn't taste too syrup or sugary, even though it is highly sugar. I mean, I've used Tailwind for a year or two now, and I don't train with it as much as maybe. Uh, I generally save it for the races, and I tend to train either on an empty stomach or only with water, just to try and in my mind, all I'm kind of doing is trying to fat burn or trying to access the fat burning energy system, even if I'm probably not doing it properly, but in my head that's kind of what I'm thinking to do. And then when I do a race, I've got the added bonus of tailwind as I need it. And it might
Hmm.
be hocus pocus, my method, but that's kind of how I feel it works for me. The only downside to gels and tailwind type products and sugars, my last race I did a month or so ago, and I DNF'd at 70 miles because I had a mild tooth infection. It wasn't killing me. It didn't stop me starting the race, but the amount of sugar and the sugar cube type sweets and the tailwind, that just aggravated the infection a little bit, and it was like a slow death. After about 50
Mm.
miles, the sugar, you could literally, I couldn't touch the side of my mouth because it was so, the sugar just must have been right in the root of the
Wow.
infection. So there is a downside to having this. And
Yeah.
a pal of mine ran the 50-mile version of this race, and he doesn't use any carbohydrate when he runs. He runs with water. He has sandwiches at the aid stations,
Hmm.
and he came sixth in a 50-mile race. So it's
Yeah.
kind of like you have to kind of find what works for you in a way. The gels,
Yeah.
the gels. I always think of energy gels as like I carry them, but I don't want to use them because
Yeah.
I always feel that at some point they get the revenge on you. And that's how I kind of see energy gels. I don't like to use them. I'd rather have, like a sandwich or some potato or some real kind of food. That's just
Hmm.
my but that's difficult in the desert because you have to carry that, obviously. So
Exactly. Like I suppose I look at that a couple of ways. When I'm doing a non-multi, a single stage ultra, I'll always dip my hand into a bag of crisps, grab a sandwich, peanuts, like whatever's there at an aid station, or on one that I've done a bunch of times, Dublin, Belfast. A friend of mine crews it for me, so I meet him like every 10 miles, and I mean, the boot of his car looks like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, right? You just, or like, a Halloween haul. But On the flip side, I always want to make sure that I'm getting enough carbohydrates. And like, I mean, I'm not athletically built. I don't come from an athletic background. I'm fairly new to all this as well. And one of the things that I think has worked for me is understanding some of the science behind it and how my body works. So my coach, who actually he has two labs, one in Dublin and one a little further south in a town called Abbey Leaks in Ireland. And so we do the cardiopulmonary exercise testing, with the face mask, and they do breath by breath analysis. We do it both on the treadmill, on the bike, and do lactate and what have you. So I know fairly accurately at any given heart rate what my mix of fats to glycogen burn is. And so, like, I'll derive from that how much carbohydrates I need to be putting in. And so, actually, what got me that first year at MDS was if I was doing that at sea level with 14-degree Irish weather, I would have breezed along fueling on macadamia nuts because I was far enough under my aerobic threshold that I was burning almost 100% fat. Or fairly close, right? You're
Yeah.
never quite 100%. But once we were in the desert, and this was the hot year, right? There was a heat wave over Morocco and Spain that year. Like we were above 50 and 55 most of the days, Celsius, and so my heart rate was through the roof. So my aerobic threshold at the time was roughly, I think, 142 or 145 BPM. And once you're close to that and over it, you're burning 100% glycogen. So the body had, like, the body wasn't able to access, and that was without putting a big effort in. It was just the heat doing it. So, like, yeah, I like the variety of grabbing that other stuff, and I've got pepperonis and all sorts of stuff that I see on the desk there that I didn't eat during MDS,
Mm.
that I use for a bit of variety. But I'm going to cover my bases with Tailwind, and like that's pretty important to me. But on the training side of it, I'm like you. I try not to train with it, but only because I've been using Tailwind since 2018, I think, maybe 2017, 2018, something like that, probably 2018. And I know how my body responds to it. I know I can take it. I know I'm not going to get sick. So the only time I'll use it is in my last few big efforts on the run up to a race. So like I've got an Ironman in October. I'll probably use it for my three long rides or my three longest rides during peak training, just to remind the body that, hey, this is coming. But other than that, yeah, I'm like you. I'll just do it on water, and if I find like I'm having a really tough time, I'll stop at a shop and buy a bottle of Gatorade or something.
Which Ironman are you doing?
I am doing California, Ironman California in
Wow.
Sacramento. Um, I had to pull out of it last year, and life got in the way, as it always does with these things, right? And is at risk of getting in the way again this year. But I've done a couple of others and not had a very enjoyable time in the sea. And so Ironman California, while it's a distance away, it's a downriver swim, it's a flat cycle. So it's like everything suited for me. So I'll get into the water and I'll let the current do the work. There are going to be no waves, trying to kill me, and then get out of the water, do a nice ride that's well suited to a TT bike. I'm pretty good at staying in the TT position, and then I'll get out of it and have a long run around a town that I don't know. So hopefully that'll be interesting enough to make it go quickly. But that'll be a tailwind powered race. But interestingly, my last Ironman, I stopped halfway. You get the special needs bags, right, that you can deposit along the way. I stopped halfway through the bike to get two more pre-made bottles of Tailwind that I had, and I must have lost 6 minutes by the time they found my bag and all of that kind of stuff. So this year I'm going to make up a super concentrated bottle and like a 1 liter bottle and stick it on the back of the bike, and we'll see how that goes. But yeah, that's an experiment. I haven't done that yet. Maybe you've tried it.
An Ironman is not something I've thought of yet, but who
Oh,
knows in a few
really?
years? Yeah, who knows in a few years? I'm okay on I've done long bike rides like 100k, 120k, and obviously running, but swimming is where I probably fall down a bit. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if you can breaststroke these things, but my front crawl is
Good.
pretty shocking. But it's something, who knows, in a few years I might have a look at it. You seem like you're really into the whole endurance thing. But where did it start for you then? What was the turning point to enter into this sort of endurance career?
When did I step into the echo chamber that normalizes
Yeah.
this behavior? um, it's I won't bore you with the full thing, but I mean, I was a big lad, right? I was 120 kilos, so I'm 6'2". I was 120 kilos, which, even on my frame, I was a big lad. And so, yeah, I started to do these little kind of boot camps with like hit boot camps and stuff like that, and lost a little bit of weight. Started doing, would you believe, Tough Mudders, and like really kind of just really enjoyed that. There was something about the grittiness of those, and that was about 2016 or so. And then one way or another, a bunch of us ended up going to the States to do World's Toughest Mudder, which is a 24-hour version of Tough Mudder. You basically
Wow.
you're on a Tough Mudder course, looping it, and it's how many loops can you do in 24 hours. And so that was my first time doing anything long. And what I learned at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and this was out in Nevada. You're running in a wetsuit because you're going in and out of water. Your body's lost the ability to thermoregulate. You're in the desert, so it's freezing at night. And all these lads, like the front of the pack, a lot of the front of the pack people, I wasn't seeing them anymore. And you realize that these guys are all off in their pit having a nap. And because, it got cold and miserable and horrible. And like, I thought it was miserable and horrible at the start, but at 3 o'clock in the morning, I kind of got into it and I came alive. And cut a long story short, I think I realized that I love the suck. Like when things get miserable and horrible, you can hear it in my voice, right? I just come to
Mm.
life. And so on the back end of that, the first set, we did that 4 times, I think, World's Toughest Mudder. On the back end of my first one of those, I was running with a lad, Tex, who became a great friend. And Tex would say, "Oh, this is so much harder than an Ironman." And that was it. I was in the echo chamber, but I didn't realize it. And I was like, "No, it couldn't be." And he said, "I'll prove it to you. When we finish this, we'll both sign up to do an Ironman together." So we signed up to do Ironman Barcelona together. He flew over from the States to come and do it. And he was absolutely lying. An Ironman is much harder than World's Toughest Mudder when you can't swim like me. And then, I think my first ultra was a backyard ultra. They do a series of them in Northern Ireland, called Last One Standing. It's run by two brothers who have a group called Atlas Running. And I kind of, like, Northern Ireland's a 6-7 hour drive for me. It like might as well be another world when you grow up in Cork. But I kind of fell into this ultra running community up there. And again, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, when you're doing a last one standing or a backyard ultra, you learn a lot about yourself, and you start to learn a lot about the people you're running with as well, right? And you make friends and you pull each other through it, through the highs and the lows. And yeah, I guess I've been trying to find the limit of what my mind will let me do since then. And well, we've certainly found the limit of what my body will let me do, but not my mind.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you go on this journey, or I certainly have, you have highs and lows, and responding to those challenges, because it's no mean feat to be sort of running 100 miles or 50 miles even, or even marathons.
Absolutely.
It's another world when you get into it. And I kind of go in, when I started this journey, I thought there's no way I can quit anything. There's no way I'll ever quit, because I kind of have that mindset of finding a way. But then when you do hit something that beats you, one race for me this year, you kind of think, I had some time to reflect on it, and I thought, well, I've learned so much about myself, and something's beat me. So now I'm actually, I went the other way. and I was like, okay, good. Then I found my limit, and I know where I'm really at, if you know what I mean. And now
Mhm.
I can work on pushing past that and learning the mistakes I made in that particular race. So I'm interested to know how you would treat that kind of, if you have a setback or if you have an injury, how do you kind of mentally process a setback and
Mm.
work your way around it and figure it out?
Oh, yeah, I mean, you'd think at my age I'd have figured that out, but I'm not sure I have. Look, I've certainly learned that I can't bluff my way through every race, right? Like yeah, there's some races you can, but some like legitimately just command respect. Like I have a failure that sits very prominently in my mind, and that was the Kerry Way Ultra. Um, I did not complete it. Kerry Way is single stage trail, quite relatively mountainous, maybe not by Norwegian standards, but by Irish standards. And I went into that ill prepared, and it handed me my ass, right? And I have not been back because I am not like, despite Oman or MDS or whatever else, I am not in the condition I need to be in to go back to that. Um, on Dublin Belfast, which I've done a good few times now. One year in particular, I succumbed to injury and probably hit the wall as well. But I was Dublin Belfast is 107 miles on tarmac, or almost all on tarmac, which is kind of hard on the body. And
Yeah, yeah.
I did it. I kind of like doing these races with people, or when there are people around that you can pick up a chat if you want to have a chat. But if you want to be alone in your head, you can do that too. But I was doing this on my own. The guy I normally did it with wasn't around that year, and with 6 miles to go, so I was at 101
Oof.
miles. I collapsed on the main dual carriageway, the A1, going into Belfast. And like a car literally, like, I don't want to say squealed to a halt, but pulled into the hard shoulder, helped me up against the wall, or to sit against the wall until my crew could come and rescue me. And actually, it was outrageous. So I didn't realize I'd started the race with an injury, and it worked. It was in my knee, and it worked the whole way up through the chain. Right, it got my hip, it got my back, it got worked down to my ankle. Like it threw everything off, whatever way I was compensating for it. And I tried to push through, I couldn't, and I probably had a few fueling issues too. So I was delirious. Like when my friend helped me into his car to drive us into Belfast, like I mean, I don't remember large parts of that journey, and I was they had to get the wheelchair from the hotel to take me out and put me into. And I was I was flying to New York the next day to meet my boss, go visit one of our offices and a bunch of customers. I couldn't walk. I was I was being I was the guy being brought down the middle of the aisle on the airplane in a wheelchair. I was like, this is outrageous. I did this to myself. So yeah, that was kind of tough. But what I learned, I've been back, and I overcame that race. But I think the difficult thing there was seeing the wood from the trees, like what actually went wrong. And I try to write it all down. So at the end of races, I write down, what am I thinking? What do I think happened? I'm probably not cognitively capable of processing it at the time, but I'll then go back and I'll look at it a few weeks later, and sometimes even a few months later, and I'll just try and put it all in place. And yeah, think about, right, what could I have done to not end up in that position? And usually the answer, Stephen, is strength and conditioning. It's like, I mean, that's almost always the thing that suffers for me, and it can't. So yeah, ignore that at your peril, because how do you test it? How do you know you've overcome it? You go and run another 100 miler or 107 miler and discover at 101 miles or 103 miles that, oh no, I didn't fix it. But you've had to go through all of that pain again to discover that it's still not fixed.
Yeah, but I mean, I always think of 100 milers in a kind of way that you can kind of, I know it sounds crazy, but you can kind of squeak a 50 mile out with something
Hmm.
wrong, if you know what I mean. You know, you can kind of get away with something. In a
Yeah.
hundred mile, in 100 miler, you can't. If
No.
something is, and the race that I recently did was the Sandnes Ultra Trail, which has 9,000 meters of elevation,
Wow.
and I mean, it really is not for the faint-hearted. It is a and the first 50 miles I did, I was really proud of my time. It was a really I did it in about 17 hours, which in that terrain
It's really good.
is really
Yeah.
good. Yeah. So it's just, on the day, and 100 miler, you need everything to go in your favor, more or
Mm.
less.
Yeah.
So it's and one thing I learned about elevation is actually you start to look forward to the elevation and start you don't want the descents. And
Mm. Oh, yeah.
I don't think enough people take the descending into account when they're training. It's all about elevation, 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 climbing, hill training, hill conditioning. Actually, going up in the end of that race, I was looking forward to the hills. I was like,
Hmm.
bring me a hill. I cannot cope with this descending. So
Yeah.
that's one big thing I learned about that is descending is and how you train that. Obviously, you have to go up and down, and you have to be really building elevation and conditioning your joints and your knees and your
Mm.
toes. I mean, my big toes were numb for 3 or 4 weeks after that race.
Really? Wow. They
Yeah,
took that level of a pounding
yeah,
that you just,
yeah,
is it called neuropathy or something like that that you get from it?
yeah. And I DNF'd at 70 miles, like you there in a state of delirium and hallucinating. I had hedgehogs running around my feet, and yeah, I mean, it was a heck of an experience. And the problem with that particular moment is I knew I would have to go another 15 hours through the night,
Hmm.
uh, back up the mountains in the nighttime. And in the back of my head, I was kind of thinking, if I get injured or if I fall over up in these mountains, that could end my training for 6 months. I could snap, I'd nearly snapped my ankle about 3 or 4 times, just falling and being tripping up over roots and branches, and I just thought, if I snap an ankle here, it's not
Hmm.
the risk reward of finishing this is not worth it if I don't train for 6 months because I've damaged something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was actually on a podcast the other week, and I was talking about this, and I kind of said that for me it's about the journey and the lifestyle I have. It's not about that one race. It's not the be all and
Hmm.
end all. That's just part of the journey. It's part of the daily thing that I do. Everything is not on that race. And I think a lot of people that I come across, everything's about, oh, I've got this one race in October and I've got this one race, and everything sort of lasered on this one thing. And if it doesn't work out, then it's a catastrophe. And I've kind of
Hmm.
I started off like that, and everything was about Oman in the lead up to that. And then I kind of thought, well, actually, Oman's just part of the journey along the way, or
Hmm.
Sandnes is just part of the journey. If I'm going to I'm going to do everything I can, but anything can happen on the day. And I think mentally for me, that was a game changer for me, not to pin my hopes and dreams on one particular thing. It was just part of a journey, part of a
Hmm.
part of a lifestyle I have now, running every day, training every day. And I don't pin everything on one thing. It's all part of a process. And you
Nice.
take you take it as it comes. That was a bit of a game changer for me, seeing that.
I think you have a more evolved way of thinking about it than I do.
Yeah.
Like I plan them out, but I think if I didn't have, you know what, the race is almost like accountability for me. It's what
Mm,
keeps me living that lifestyle of training, 6 days out of 7 or whatever it might be, and you know, helping me avoid making poor lifestyle decisions. I mean, I still make plenty of poor lifestyle decisions, but I'm capable of making even worse lifestyle decisions. But if I didn't have Ironman California in October, I'd be doing very little right now. Like I need to know that that thing is there, and so that's going to force me to be ready. And I'll almost always have the next thing after booked as well, or have a good idea of what that could be, so that when I come down off the whatever that race is, that I'll give myself a week or two, but then just sort of get back into it and keep going. But just what you said there about not injuring yourself, though, you were thinking about you have another 15 hours to go in the mountains and so on. I made a promise to my wife not to take stupid risks, and like that does loom large in your head, right, when you're doing these things. And I understand that not taking stupid risks is relative, right? There could be people who think what we do is in itself crazy and stupid and a big risk, but within that, I think having a good head on your shoulders for actually, this is not a clever idea. I'm delirious and I'm about to go back up a mountain. Don't do it. Right. Um,
I
that's
mean,
what also keeps me off Everest.
well, that's an analogy that I use to people. I went back to the UK a few weeks ago, and people were asking me, "Oh, what happened in this race?" Blah blah blah. The analogy I use is that if you're on the way to Everest, and your oxygen is going to run out, but you still go to the top, and you're going to die on the way down because your oxygen's gone, you don't go to the top. You turn back there and then.
Yeah,
Otherwise you're gonna die, and you're gonna look stupid. There's
yeah,
no point. There's no point going to the top if you die on the way down. That's idiocy. So
absolutely.
that's an analogy I kind of use that I knew, and I was actually quite proud of myself in my own little way that
Yeah,
I made that decision, albeit one of the aid station workers made the call for me.
yeah,
Um, and I went with it. I could have fought it perhaps, and I do feel that, and I question things back. Did I wait long enough in the aid station? Maybe I could have slept for 2 hours instead of, I've been going for 35 hours without stopping. Could I have just slept for 2 hours instead of sort of thinking I could give it half an hour? So there's a few
mm,
questions, and but that's all part of it. You don't have the perfect answer of what to do in these races. You think you do, you think you have a plan, and then you get punched in the nose and it all goes to shit. So
yeah,
it's just learning, and taking things from the races, and and moving forward. But
yeah.
what does an Ironman training week look like for you then?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, if I open Training Peaks, oh, I don't have it logged in on that computer, or on this browser. Um, there'll be typically I'll have two swims. That's what I'm doing after our chat today, and I will do everything I can to avoid it because I'm awful at it. I don't enjoy it. I will have on the weekends. I'll always have a long ride and a long run, and those will get increasingly longer. So those are both just two zone two efforts, maybe with the odd bit of zone four thrown in there, right? But so those are on the weekend, and then midweek it's a mix of turbo trainer work on the bike, where we'll be kind of really mixing up intervals, and similarly for running. I'll do some interval sessions and just really mix it up and try and work on the speed midweek. And what I'm trying to do now, on top of that, but again, we all have lives and families and jobs and so on and so forth, which can make it hard. But I was better than I have been in a long time going into MDS with strength and conditioning, and I'm trying to keep that going now for this Ironman training as well. I mean, I really felt the difference. So, like I was doing reformer Pilates, going into MDS, which was new to me. I'd never done it before, and it's like, it's the old man's strength training, right? But actually, it worked really well for me. And the other thing I was doing, so I was doing that twice a week, and I was doing Bikram yoga twice a week. And I'm not a yoga guy, and there's no spiritual element to it for me or anything like that. But it was 40 degrees at 40% humidity for an hour and a half twice a week. And so there was great heat adaptation from that. And also, like it genuinely was good stretching for my body. So if I can keep that going with my typical 6 days of training for Ironman, I will. But I'm traveling a lot for work, which does make it tricky. So that's what I aspire to.
I've always been intrigued with an Ironman because I'm more of a zone 2 slow burner. When I do these big ultra races, I like to have a nice cut-off time. I don't kind of want to go into it thinking about a cut-off, because that's just me personally. I just like to enjoy it, not take my time, but I always want to. I don't work well if I say was doing 100 miles and it had a 20-hour cutoff. That would be, I probably wouldn't pick those kind of races. So how do you go in an Ironman? Are you going as fast as you can the whole time, or are you looking to sort of pace yourself in sort of zone 3 and you want a good time, or are you how do you kind of approach it?
So let me lead into answering that. Like, if you told me I had to go out tomorrow and run a marathon, I'd be pretty stressed about it. If you told me I had to go out tomorrow and run 100K, I'd be smiling and say, yeah, no problem.
Same. I'm the same. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm a big old diesel locomotive. I can go forever. Like, I mean, unless you're Killian Jornet or some of the people that have beaten us in races, like, we can probably outrun most runners, right? We're just going to do it at a different speed.
Yeah.
But if you tell me I've got to do 26.2 miles and I've got to get it in 3 hours, whatever, that's going to stress the hell out of me. So for the Ironman, like, I mean, again, I know there are age groupers and pros who do, but you can't really attack an Ironman, a full distance Ironman. Like, you're looking to do it in zone 2. The key is shifting your zone 2. So, like, what are you capable of doing in your zone 2? Because you can't, like, okay, if you're a pro, you're doing it in 8 hours. Like, you're not going to do 8 hours in zone 4. You can't. You're like, the body cannot get enough fuel into it to keep fueled for 8 hours above your aerobic threshold. So the work and all the zone 2 training that we all do is just trying to shift your aerobic threshold so that you're able to go faster and harder in zone 2. But of course, your perceived effort doesn't really shift then. So, but over the course of an Ironman, for me, you do have cardiac drift. I mean, I'm not doing sub 10-hour Ironmans like this one. This one in October, if work doesn't get in the way, which it kind of is at the moment, I would hope to maybe squeeze it in under 11 hours, which for me would be a huge result, like huge result. But there'll be cardiac drift through that. And so while, the first half of the cycle, I'll keep that in zone 2. Maybe even keep a good portion, or I'd be probably tipping around aerobic threshold in the second half of the cycle. And then the run, just bless yourself and try and bluff your way through it, because, at that stage, your heart rate has climbed so high. You just get whatever fuel you can in and put the best effort in. Certainly, I don't approach the marathon at the end of an Ironman as a marathon. I approach it as a long run at the end of a long day.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to put the 3 disciplines together in training terms, because I think, I mean, I'm running every day, and I enjoy a cycle now and then. I probably don't do it enough, but I think for me, the swimming, I would need to really put some time and focus into it.
It's miserable.
Yeah.
I mean, I know there are people who love it and who are good at it, but man, I dread it. And I wear these like, what are they, aftershocks, bone conduction headphones to give me something to take my mind off the fact that I really hate the swim.
Mhm.
And they attack the water. Yeah, and I've had lessons and all that kind of stuff, but I still attack the water, so my breathing gets very erratic. And when you're running, that's fine. If you're not smooth when you're running, because nothing inhibits your breathing. But like in the water, I can only breathe when my head's out of the water. And so if I'm attacking it and my heart rate is up and my breathing's erratic, anyway, I'm getting stressed thinking about it. Are you, tell me this, are you going back to Oman?
I'm not going back to Oman, unfortunately. Maybe I think MDS would be the natural one. There's a cost to MDS, which is a
Oh, yeah.
bit fruity.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
but I have some races, some 100 milers in the plan now. One in August potentially. That's a 24-hour race, so
Nice.
it potentially could be 100 mile. One in October over in near Oslo, and
Cool.
then my kind of next big race that I'm kind of focused on is a GB Ultras Chester 100 mile. So that's around the same time Sandnes 100 mile is, which I had to
Hmm.
book I had to book the Chester race to stop me booking the Sandnes one because I'd forgotten about all the pain and I was starting to think
Hmm.
about booking it again for some redemption. But
Hmm.
I decided to go with something that's not as technical because
Yeah.
Sandnes is a very 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 technical race. I mean, even to the shoe choice,
Oh,
um,
really?
even to the shoe choice, that was a mistake I made. So we have there's a brand called VJs. It's a Finnish brand. 90% of people have all got VJs on for the
Yep.
grip. I
Hmm.
started in VJs and I changed them at 50 miles because they were just completely sodden and muddy, and my feet were coming out of them almost. And
Hmm.
I did have another pair of VJs that I should have put in the drop bag, like an old battered pair of VJs that I should have used, and I chose to put a pair of Salomon Ultra 3 in my drop bag because they're quite comfortable to run in. And I thought, okay,
Yeah.
the second half of the race, I'll put the Salomon on if I need to. And they had no grip
Oh,
whatsoever.
no.
The
Right.
grip was just non-existent. So, which I'm surprised because they're an S Lab, so they're a pro Solomon shoe, but
Hmm.
they just had no grip at all. And they're great to run in gravel or
Hmm.
in mud or whatever, but
Yeah.
on the technical wet rocks down and roots,
Hmm.
just forget it. They were absolutely no good at all. So that's another
Did
thing.
you wear
Those
those in Oman? Are those did you wear VJs in Oman?
No, in Oman I wore Raid Light, the Raid Light Ultra 4, which is like basically a desert shoe.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
actually, because I knew we were doing this podcast, I ran in the Raid Light. I'd not worn them since Oman, and
Hmm.
I wore them yesterday just to take me back, and my feet were killing after.
Really?
I only did 10K, and I got a blister on one of my feet. So it's funny, really, because they didn't give me any problems in Oman, and they were
Hmm.
really the kind of shoe. I did a YouTube video where I talked about my kit and everything, and I like the Raid Light shoes, and they didn't give me any problems at all. But they're kind of like a one-use shoe, so I kind of got
Uh,
a hundred odd K out of them, but I don't think you could do two with it.
wow. Let me tell you, I'll show you and I'll describe for people who can't see. These are my Hoka Challenger all-terrains that I wore in both Oman and MDS, the actual pair that I wore.
Wow.
But you'll notice that there is no heel on the shoe. So I lost the heel to my right shoe, while running MDS, because some of the rocks at MDS are horrendous. The exact same thing happened to me in the exact same model of shoe at MDS the first time. And so like my feet were fine until this came off, and it
Wow.
threw my stride out because I mean there's probably I don't know what the difference of foam that I lost there was, but maybe 4 millimeters, 5 millimeters. So my feet were uneven. And then the knee pain started and the hip pain started and everything else. But those shoes breezed through Oman, I guess because there were no rocks, right? It was all sand. But
Yeah.
once we got to some of the technical, very sharp rock parts of MDS, it just ripped it straight off. I mean, I'm mind blown. These are Hokas, right? And to have the exact same thing happen on two different pairs of Hoka on the same race. So I think maybe I need to try a pair of VJs or go back to Solomon's or something. But if I were to ever go back to MDS again, I couldn't do it wearing those shoes.
VJs have got a new shoe out called the VJ Ultra 3.
Oh yeah.
And most people at Sandnes had these new VJ Ultra 3 on. I contacted VJ because I've had some, they've sponsored the podcast on a couple of episodes in the past. And I contacted them, but the model wasn't out until a week or two before the Sandnes race. So I didn't want to risk maybe just waiting for that shoe. So I had a pair of VJ Lightspeed, which are the lightest shoe known to man. You don't even,
Really?
if you're holding the shoe, it feels like you're holding a feather. They're incredible.
Wow.
So I used them, but my mistake was going out of them into the Solomon. Now I like the Solomon because they're very what's the word? Very universal. I can use them on gravel, road, but you just can't use them on wet rocks. There is just nothing on earth that compares to VJs on rocks and wet rocks. So for those kind of races, the reason why I chose the Chester 100 mile is because it's very runnable, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to get so technical about what I'm putting in the drop bags and things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
and the GB Ultras 4 race series I'm going to have a go at, which is I think it's Chester, something in Snowdon, race across Scotland, and then one other one. So
Nice.
I think that's kind of like a good project over the next few years to look at. But yeah, MDS, I've kind of looked into it, but then I see the price, and then it's pretty heavy. That.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad I went back. I had a very different race than I had the first time. I think I took 24 hours off my total
Oh
accumulated
wow.
time, but the conditions were very different as well. Like we had rain and sandstorms versus being over 55 degrees the first time. But so, but the race has changed. There's new ownership, and it is, and I don't mean this in any way to sort of throw shade on anyone's accomplishment doing it. It is still a hard race, but it is definitely being made more of a participatory event. Um, there are compromises being made on it that will ensure the finish rate continues to increase and increase and increase, and that's probably a good thing. But when your brand started as the toughest foot race on earth, yeah, I'm not so sure. So between that and the price and a few other things, I'll go back if a couple of friends of mine at home in Ireland have their eye on it, and I wouldn't let them do it alone if they want to go and do it in a few years. But by contrast, I'd go back to Oman in a heartbeat. In fact, I will probably go back to Oman in January. That was just so much fun. And they're changing the course apparently this year. It's going to go back to the original Oman course, which finishes at the sea, which
Oh wow.
sounds like that could be great to run into the sea afterwards. But yeah, Oman, or sorry, MDS, that's an awful lot of money, and it's a lot of time too, because There are no more charter flights. They used to be charter flights, so they'd fly you out there from Gatwick or from Paris, and that was included in your race entry. So that saved you a bit of time. But now you've got to get to Marrakesh or Ouarzazate, then be bussed into the desert. Then you're 2 nights in the desert. Then you've 7 nights of the race, and then you've kind of 2 nights back in Ouarzazate again afterwards. Like realistically, you're gone for 2 weeks, and like that's a lot of your holiday time from work and a lot of money. And the family are thinking, well, when do we get a holiday? Whereas something like Oman, or as you say, some of the GB Ultras, even some of the Ultra X races, you can kind of get in and get out and still have a great experience. So yeah, I think everybody should probably do MDS once, but it's definitely a different race than it used to be. And I mean, there are people who do it every year, and good for them. But I think there are other great races around the world. I think there's a letter to Laz in my future to see if I could ever get a wild card entry into into Barkley.
I actually compared, maybe a little bit wrong, but I actually compared Sandnes Ultra to kind of the Barclays, because there's parts
Really?
of that where there's no trail and you are bushwhacking, and you are up the side of mountains, and you think there's no way where is my watch right taking me up here? It can't be. And I was actually watching quite a few documentaries on the Barkley, and that is one heck of a race. I mean, I don't think it's it's not in my wheelhouse, because it looks like legit tough, but I would love to talk to somebody if you ever did that. And you should just apply anyway and see, and because you never
few
lose.
Irish guys have done it, and I've been put in contact with one of them to get a little bit of guidance. I mean, again, I'm not that kind of athlete, but I might be stubborn enough to. I mean, I reckon I've got one lap in me anyway, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, the odds of actually getting into the race are slim to none. But I'd love to do that. And actually, that's new for me to say. I'd love to do that. It's probably only in the last year that I've thought, actually, maybe that's worth a crack. But the bucket list has always been the Badwater 135. Like that's just that's a race that's got to be done.
My friend is doing it. He won it a few years ago. Yeah,
really?
Yeah, Simon Holvik. If you look back on my podcast, he's on one of my episodes about, I think it's maybe 4 or 5 episodes ago. He won Badwater a couple of years ago.
Oh wow! Okay, I know what I'm listening to on my cycle tomorrow. Then I'll download that episode of your podcast.
Yeah, and he lives in Stavanger, so he lives a few hours south of me, and we have a bit of contact. But he is, and we have the same coach, and he is a legit. He is possibly in the top 5 or 6 ultra runners on earth. There's no question.
Oh yeah.
So he's going back to Badwater in a few weeks now, or is it in maybe a month or two? Yeah. So I'm kind of following his. He's running I think he's running around 200k a week in preparation.
Is he pro, or does he actually hold down a job at the same time?
He actually went pro for a couple of years, and then he's gone back to work this year. So he's working. He runs 15k to work. He runs 15k home. That's kind of his training. But his pacing is just out of this world. You can't even compare it. When you look at it, you just think, how can you run 100k at 4:30? It's just insane. Like it's just next level. And it's kind of interesting because a few of my friends I was talking to, and they were kind of like, wow, Steve, you're kind of running 80K a week, that's just unreal. I don't understand how you can do it. And I'm like, listen, I've got friends who are running 200K a week, 150K a week with jobs,
Hmm.
with families. So I'm not
Yeah.
even running that much. I'm running a bit, but compared to these guys, like, and it just kind of puts in perspective, if people are thinking about getting into it, and I mean, you don't have to run 80K a week, but you can run 30, or you can always find time, you know, and you've just
Yeah.
got to kind of get into how these people do it and get the discipline. And like you said, it's a good point about accountability. If you've got an Ironman coming up, you can't really afford a week off. You'll set yourself back a lot. You have to be grinding it every day, 80K on the bike, 20K run. You have to really grind it out. After if you lose a week, you're set back, or I am anyway.
I mean, on the aerobic side of things, you're absolutely right. But I think for me, and I'm not running at Simon Holvick's level, right?
No.
Nor do I have an ambition to. But if you remember when you first started running, your body fell apart, right? You had all the
Yeah,
injuries and all the everything, and then you conditioned your body to run it. And
yeah,
so either one of us could go out and run a marathon now.
yeah,
We mightn't cover ourselves in 3 hours something glory, but of course we could go out and do the distance. Um, what I find then when I started ultra running was it took a long time to condition my body to it, particularly because I wasn't doing strength and conditioning and stuff like that. But now in my training for it, it's less about long runs and more about running when tired. So like
yeah,
having that long effort on day one and then another long effort on day two, so that when you get up, that the body is tired and just training through that rather than, hey, I've got to build up my mileage. So like in the run up to MDS, I still wasn't running, I suppose, probably anything more than 3 hour sessions. But I was doing a lot of them, and I was doing them on my local beach, wearing a 12 kilo weighted vest.
wow,
My dog running in front of me, thinking, "What is wrong with you? Why are you going so slowly?" Uh, but you run on the beach with a weighted vest for 3 hours, 2 days in a row, and you learn all about running tired. But I don't think you have to run long. You just run frequently, right?
yeah. And that's a classic mistake that I see all the time, is that people will do a big race, or will run a long run and maybe do a half marathon, and then they'll go, okay, I've done that, I'll take a week off now. And then basically they think they've earned a week off, or they've taken a month off, and they switch off from that event, and then
Mm.
they've got to build it all back up again slowly, and it's a real setback. I mean, after I DNF'd the last one, I'd gone 110 kilometers. I had 2 days off where I just walked the dog, so
Mm.
I was still mobile. But on day 3 after the race, I ran 10K, 10K, and I was back in almost immediately, because I was conscious of not thinking I've deserved a week or two off, because then it would have set me back way too much, and I would then have to build back up again. So I was really conscious of keeping the momentum and compounding the gains, and running through. I mean, last
Mm.
week I had to take I took some days off last week because my quads were blown up, and I was like, this is ridiculous now. I have to give my quads a couple of days just to calm down. But I was
Mm.
still kind of walking about and hiking with the dog, and keep him moving. But it's important not to switch off. It's to keep the momentum, keep pushing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It is, yeah. And look, I fell into that trap a little after MDS this time. My training over the last 4 6 weeks hasn't been at the level it should have been. So I'm back into the swing of things now, but or sorry, I'm back into the schedule now, but it'll take a couple more weeks to sort of catch back up on where the fitness was. But it does come back kind of quickly. The problem is you don't lose the weight that you put on, or I don't lose the weight that I put on during those 4 to 6 weeks as quickly as I might like to. and that's some of the discipline that separates me from the front of the pack in the races that we do.
Yeah, same for me, because I eat basically, I eat what I want, I drink what I want. I don't tend, and that's my kind of little bit of a reward in that, because I'm doing so much aerobic exercise, I don't really have to think too much. If I was to take it to the next level and I'm starting to diet and all this kind of thing, that's probably would take a little bit of the enjoyment out of what I do, and the general enjoyment of life and just enjoying yourself. So it's finding a balance, you know. Obviously, you don't want to be in McDonald's every day. That's just ridiculous, you know. But every now and again,
There was a guy did MDS with us this year, a very well known Irish runner called Ger Prendergast, and Ger's a low 2 hour something marathon runner.
Wow.
And he talks about what it takes to go sub 3, and like you're changing your world to go from being, let's say, a 3.5 hour marathon runner to a 2 anything. Like your entire lifestyle, your diet, your sleep, your everything changes when you start getting into those kind of what become really diminishing returns, but you got to keep chasing them in at that. And that's not for me. But like I'm like you, and my coach will tell me, right? I'll talk to my coach and he'll be like, why don't you go for a curry and a couple of beers? And I'm like, that is a crackingly good idea, which might be why my coach and I are still working together 9 years later or 8 years later. You got to live, and there's no point to, because like some of this training is miserable, right? We enjoy it afterwards, not necessarily during it. And so yeah, I think if you were to rob yourself of, certainly from my perspective, a couple of beers or a curry and a naan bread or something like that, or a pizza, what's the point?
Same. Ronan, it's been fantastic talking to you, mate. I love following everything you do, and thanks so much for your time and giving us an insight into how you do everything. Good luck in your upcoming Ironman. I'll be following that, and who knows, maybe one day I will look into it. But yeah, once again, thanks so much, mate.
Cheers. I really appreciate it. And we got to do a start line together sometime again soon.
Yeah, well, we stay in touch, mate, like we do. And yeah, I'll let you know what I'm doing. Maybe I'll take the trip over to Ireland and do something. I've worked over in Ireland a bit. I love the place. Fantastic. But yeah, we'll keep in touch, mate, and we'll see what comes up.
Amazing. Talk to you soon, buddy.
Thanks, mate. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Good luck.